What if the life you want is not being destroyed by one great failure, but by 1,000 small repetitions you barely notice? Most people believe their future will be shaped by big decisions. A new opportunity. A breakthrough. A life-changing moment. But the Stoics understood something far more uncomfortable. Your future is being built right now by what you repeatedly tolerate. The distractions you excuse. The habits you defend. The thoughts you entertain. The words you repeat. The routines you refuse to question. A person rarely wakes up one day and suddenly becomes weak, distracted, unfocused, or directionless. They become that person gradually. One delayed task at a time. One wasted morning at a time. One excuse at a time. One comfortable choice at a time. And because the changes happen slowly, they often go unnoticed. Days become weeks. Weeks become years. Years become a life. Then one day, a person looks around and wonders why they are not where they hope to be. The answer is usually hiding in the ordinary. Because destiny is rarely created by dramatic moments. It is created by repeated ones. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. Every thought leaves a mark. Every habit leaves a mark. Every repeated action leaves a mark. The question is simple. What are your repetitions creating? Whether you realize it or not, you are becoming something every day. The only question is whether you are becoming it intentionally.
Welcome to True Stoic Journal, the path to inner control.
Most people spend their lives reacting. They wake up and immediately surrender their attention. Before their feet touch the floor, they are already consuming information. Notifications. Messages. News. Entertainment. Other people's opinions. Other people's priorities. Other people's fears. The mind never gets a chance to stand on its own. It begins the day carrying the weight of the world before it has even carried itself. This pattern has become so common that people mistake it for normal. But normal is not always healthy. Normal is not always wise. Normal is not always effective. The Stoics understood that attention is one of the most valuable resources a human being possesses. Because whatever captures your attention eventually shapes your life. What you focus on repeatedly becomes what you think about. What you think about repeatedly becomes what you believe. What you believe repeatedly becomes how you act. And how you act becomes who you are. That is why self-examination is so important. Not because it feels comfortable. Because it reveals the truth. Most people avoid examining their lives closely because clarity removes excuses. Clarity exposes patterns. It reveals where time is being wasted. Where energy is leaking. Where potential is being traded for comfort. The Stoic is willing to face this discomfort because growth begins where illusion ends. Look carefully at an ordinary day. The way you wake up. The way you respond to inconvenience. The way you speak. The way you eat. The way you handle boredom. The way you respond to discomfort. These details seem insignificant. Yet they quietly shape the structure of an entire life. A weak hour repeated every day becomes years of weakness. A distracted morning repeated every day becomes a distracted life. A person rarely falls because of one terrible choice. More often, they drift because of thousands of unexamined ones. This is why repetition matters so much. Everything repeated becomes easier. Everything repeated becomes familiar. Everything repeated begins creating identity. A habit starts as a choice. Then it becomes a preference. Then it becomes a pattern. Then it becomes part of who you believe you are. This process happens whether the habit is useful or destructive. The mind does not care. It simply learns what is repeated. That is why discipline is not built through occasional effort. It is built through consistency. Many people wait for motivation before taking action. The Stoics never trusted motivation. They trusted repetition. Motivation changes with mood. Repetition creates character. A person who exercises only when inspired remains inconsistent. A person who acts regardless of inspiration becomes reliable. The same principle applies to every area of life. Focus, patience, courage, self-control, confidence. These qualities are not gifts. They are habits. And habits are built through repetition. Every action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every excuse is a vote. Every act of discipline is a vote. Every distraction is a vote. Every moment of restraint is a vote. The future is not waiting somewhere ahead. It is being constructed right now through your daily behavior. This is why the Stoics focused so heavily on action. Not words. Not intentions. Not wishes. Action. Many people talk about becoming stronger. Fewer people repeatedly do the things that create strength. Many people admire discipline. Fewer people practice it when nobody is watching. Many people dream about a better future. Fewer people build it through ordinary choices. The difference between the two groups is rarely talent. It is repetition. But habits alone do not shape identity. Words shape identity as well. The language you repeat becomes the reality you experience. Listen closely to someone for a few minutes and you can often hear the structure of their inner world. Some people constantly speak in limitations. I can't. I always fail. Nothing works for me. Things never change. At first, these statements sound harmless. But the mind is always listening. Repeated language becomes repeated belief. Repeated belief becomes repeated behavior. This is why careless speech is dangerous. Not because words are powerful by themselves. Because words influence thought. And thought influences action. A person who constantly describes themselves as weak eventually begins acting weak. A person who constantly describes challenges as impossible eventually stops trying. A person who constantly complains trains their mind to search for reasons to remain dissatisfied. The Stoics were extremely careful with language. They understood that speech can strengthen a person or weaken them. When difficulty appears, one person says, "This is impossible." Another says, "This is difficult." The situation is identical. The language is different. And that difference changes everything. One statement creates surrender. The other creates possibilities. One creates a limitation. The other creates resilience. The words you repeat every day are shaping your future, whether you realize it or not. This is why excuses are so dangerous. Every excuse protects a weakness. Every excuse delays growth. Every excuse teaches the mind that avoidance is acceptable. The moment excuses become habitual, progress slows. Not because opportunity disappears. Because responsibility disappears. The Stoics understood that responsibility creates freedom. Excuses create dependence. One strengthens character. The other weakens it. That is why a person who wants to transform their life must eventually become ruthless. Not toward others. Toward unnecessary distractions. Toward wasteful habits. Toward behaviors that quietly steal attention and energy. Most people think growth requires adding more. More books. More routines. More systems. More information. Sometimes growth requires subtraction. Removing what weakens you. Removing what distracts you. Removing what constantly pulls you away from your highest priorities. The modern world is full of noise. Constant stimulation. Constant entertainment. Constant interruption. Many people have become so accustomed to noise that silence feels uncomfortable. Yet silence is where clarity lives. Silence reveals what distraction hides. Silence reveals what needs attention. Silence reveals what requires change. The Stoic does not fear stillness. The Stoic uses it. Because a distracted mind cannot build a focused life. A divided mind cannot build a disciplined life. A scattered mind cannot build a meaningful life. Focus requires elimination. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every habit deserves continuation. Not every relationship deserves unlimited access to your energy. Life becomes stronger when unnecessary weight is removed. This is where structure becomes essential. Without structure, the day controls you. With structure, you begin controlling the day. A person without routines is constantly negotiating with themselves. Should I do the work? Should I exercise? Should I focus? Should I start tomorrow? The Stoic removes these negotiations through ritual. They decide once. Then repeat. That repetition creates stability. Eventually, discipline becomes less exhausting because it stops feeling optional. It becomes identity. The person no longer sees themselves as someone trying to be disciplined. They see themselves as a disciplined person. An identity is powerful. Because people naturally act in alignment with who they believe they are. This is the final lesson. Transformation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aligned. Your thoughts. Your words. Your habits. Your actions. Your values. All are moving in the same direction. The Stoics understood that true strength is not built through dramatic moments. It is built through ordinary days lived intentionally. Through repeated honesty. Repeated discipline. Repeated focus. Repeated courage. The world will always offer distraction. Comfort will always be available. Excuses will always be easy to find. But character is built by those who repeatedly choose a different path. One decision. One habit. One day at a time. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to True Stoic Journal for more timeless lessons on discipline, self-mastery, and inner peace. Remember this, you do not become what you wish for. You become what you repeatedly practice. And the life you are creating tomorrow is already hidden inside the habits you repeat today.